excited to be here tonight?
Because I'm just excited.
Yeah. No other explanation. Now, I do believe, tell me the truth, is it true that your dad has a ringside seat but didn't get you guys ringside seats?
That is true, but it's because of his YouTube channel, okay? It's his YouTube, okay?
Her dad's an influencer. Let him go, guys. But your dad's awesome, right?
Yeah.
See, he's awesome. Yeah! Give it up for Claire. Thank you so much, Claire. High five. Yeah.
Can you believe that there's some people in this world that did not tune in to the Alliance Vlog podcast? Shame on you! Shame on you! My name is Ella Indy, and I'm one half of the NWA Women's World Tag Team Champion, and I'm Kinsey Page, the other half of the NWA World Women's Tag Team Champion. And you better go listen to the Alliance Vlog, what is it called? Podcast, period. Or you're ugly. Period. Power approved.
Hey guys, check this out. I am officially now sponsored by Dubby. Dubby is a clean energy drink made to give you focus with no crash. If you guys are like me, you're always needing a burst of energy, especially with one with no crash. Dubby contains vitamins, amino acids, a nootropic, and 150 milligrams of caffeine. It keeps me awake with no jitters, guys. Check it out. Merch link is in the bio. Dubby. What is up, everybody? Welcome to the pre-party, a presentation of Alliance-Wrestling.com, the premier source for news and information for the National Wrestling Alliance. My name is Jay Cal. This gentleman to my left is the great Paul, the editor of the NWA magazine. You might also know Paul as Pollo Del Mar, the most vivacious manager in all of the National Wrestling Alliance. And we are doing the pre-party today here on Tuesday ahead of what's supposed to be a best of, a recap, a remember this episode of NWA Power. Paul, how are you today?
I'm doing great. What a gorgeous t-shirt you have on.
Yeah, right?
T-shirt.
Where can people get this at, Paul?
Oh my gosh. That appears to be the lovely and talented Pollo Del Mar on your shirt. They could probably hit up Pollo Del Mar on all socials to find out how to get that t-shirt.
I
wear it in the United States.
Yeah, I wear it with pride. I wore it at Pride, to be honest, and yeah, it's a pretty dope shirt.
I love it.
So of course, a lot of talk today. I know it's not exactly 100% pertaining to the National Wrestling Alliance, but I think it is noteworthy that the biggest professional wrestling company in the world just announced that they will now be exclusive in some capacity to a streaming app. It sounds very familiar. It's like the NWA was like a trailblazer when it came to putting their content on a streaming platform that has something that hadn't been done before exclusively with the NWA now on the CW app. The WWE just announced today that Monday Night Raw will become the exclusive property of Netflix going forward in 2025. I gotta think, Paul, that's kind of affirming that maybe the NWA heading to the CW app was the right choice. I know you can't speak in official capacity from William Patrick Corgan, but as somebody who's towing the company line and somebody who represents the National Wrestling Alliance, what are your thoughts on this big news for the WWE?
Man, I think it must be terrible for them that cocaine spot got them removed from their partnership and got thrust over onto Netflix. Can you imagine? So I can't speak for the National Wrestling Alliance as a whole, but what I will say is that streaming platforms are quite clearly the way of the future. Most people, as I think I mentioned on a previous time visiting you, I haven't owned a television set since before the pandemic. So every single thing I watch is online, either through a streaming platform or some other location where I'm able to access my favorite television networks, where I'm able to access my favorite televised professional wrestling. So Netflix, of course, is a huge streaming platform. And if there was any promotion in the world today that was launching with the partnership that WWE has just announced, that would be heralded as a huge victory for that company. Obviously, WWE feels that this is going to be very financially rewarding for them. They feel that this is a great place to have their content. And for us at the National Wrestling Alliance, when we had the opportunity to partner with the CW and make our flagship program, the National Wrestling Alliance NWA Power, available to users of the CW and their related app, we were excited and ecstatic as well.
Now, of course, it goes without saying that we're just about I guess 2 weeks away before new content arrives on the CW app. A lot of people are excited about it. There are a few people who, I got to tell you, Paul, they're feeling left out, and I know you've heard it. We even briefly talked about it last week. There is no official update yet on international broadcasting partners for the NWA. But can you speak to that audience that is feeling a little left out right now? Because I know that there's some people who are feeling a little left out.
Yeah, quite left out. I think some of them. We are very aware that one of the beautiful things that we've had through our relationship with YouTube is the opportunity to build global audiences. And YouTube is available globally, and that has made our product available globally. So we've grown tremendous support outside the United States, and it's something that is quite important to us. We want to continue to be able to grow that. This inability to be accessed directly through the CW network app outside the United States, I think, is something that's a growing pain for this. I certainly think that more than think, I know for a fact that we are working very diligently internally to try to find out how best to tackle this problem, how to make our programs accessible outside of the United States. And anybody who caught me on the my recent interview with British Broadcasting Corporation probably heard me say towards the end of it, I would never outright suggest anybody get a VPN and find methods and means around the rights, to access things within the United States. But I will tell you, having not had a television set for 3 years, I found some pretty interesting ways to access my wrestling content just on the internet. So as much as we would like to have a formal way that our fans can do that, we don't at the moment. And as soon as we do, we will make that known to everybody. It is something that is being worked on. I got a text message about it this very morning. Like, that's what I woke up to. So it's at the forefront of our minds.
Paul, do you mind fielding some of the comments that are coming in?
Of course.
Okay. So the first one is Chris Drummond says, and Chris identifies as the villain of the NWA for various reasons, but he wants to say, was it a fumble not clearing international before we got to this point?
I don't think it's a fumble at all. What you have to look at is sometimes there will be, a step back to take steps forward. And I think overall, in the minds of most, gaining a relationship with the CW is a huge advance. So the fact that we are still trying to figure out the technicalities of how international audiences can watch, I don't consider that a fumble in the least. I appreciate, Chris, first of all, I also appreciate the fact that you are a consistent supporter of NWA, often present both in our live streams on YouTube as well as here, amongst other places. And your criticisms of us are things that when criticisms are within reason, they are a way for us to help quality control our own product. And so I do see what you're saying here, but this is something that in our eyes, such a massive step forward from being available on YouTube to being associated and affiliated with a top 20 television network in the United States, that sometimes you'll take a short-term loss to get the long-term gain.
And so, and I mean, I guess that's something we have to consider, right? Like, as harsh as it sounds, and I don't want to say it this way, but it's like you got to crack a few eggs to make an omelet.
Mm-hmm.
It's a growing pain. That's a necessity for the NWA to grow, obviously, but surely, clearly, the NWA has identified like, hey, this isn't going to work long term for our global fans, and like you just said, that they're looking to come to a resolution with that. Something that our pal Fiona said was why wasn't this considered sooner? Was it something that just kind of got mixed up in the sauce, or is it something that you just said, hey, you know, we have to get to this CW deal, and we'll consider the repercussions after that launches?
I think that is something that I can't really speak to, why it wasn't considered sooner.
That's fair.
Because I wasn't part of the original planning phase of our transition over to the CW. I don't think that many of us who are in the position that we're in, where we are able to kind of talk with some level of knowledge about sort of what's going on behind the scenes. But I will also say that I don't think that we necessarily had a full understanding of what the limitations would be necessarily moving over. It's quite often, for most of us in life, we don't recognize the shortfalls of a plan until it's actually in action.
Yeah,
we see the benefit, but we can't see what the shortfalls could be. So this is something that again, like, I know it's not the popular answer. The reason I know it's not the popular answer is because people have been told this dozens of times at this point.
Yeah,
but it's something we are increasingly aware of, and we are actively working to find an outcome for.
As a bit of just a pat on your back, Paul, our friend Dodi, who's from Indonesia, says, raise Paul's paycheck. Paul and us deserve more than that. He needs to be the new booker for the NWA. So,
well, I don't know about that, Dodi, but I do appreciate the support that comes from that I've been getting for the roles that I currently have. You know, the feedback that I've received in relation to changes currently to the NWA website, feedback as relates to the NWA magazine. Those are things I'm directly responsible for. Those have all been overwhelmingly positive, and I'm very, very grateful for that kind of support.
Fiona says, I appreciate the response, but I feel like the lack of communication has been the real issue. And I kind of have to agree with her, Paul. Like, and again, I'm not asking for you to answer for all the shortcomings, you know, for the NWA, but it does feel like that lack of communication has kind of hurt. And maybe it's just because there wasn't a clear-cut answer for the NWA to announce. But I mean, it just feels like as a fan, as somebody watching, it does kind of feel like there hasn't been a lot of communication to the fan base. Like, again, we didn't even know that last week there would be a new episode until you literally announced it while you were on the show. So I do feel like that's
I literally didn't know that there was until I announced it on the show either. So
our pal Steve G says, what happens to watch-alongs and live chats on the CW? Well, I think I can fill this one because I did watch a couple of programs on CW. I went back and watched the entire season of Power that was uploaded back in, I guess, I want to say December or maybe November. And it's great, but there is no chat-alongs. There's no watch-alongs. There's no live chat. It's just like you'd watch any other program, like on Netflix or on Prime or anything else. There's no opportunity to chat with it. And again, that might be something for us live streamers to consider as, you know, hey, maybe we all decide to watch it at one time.
That's a great opportunity. In corporate speak, what an opportunity this is. You know, Steve, this is where I'm going to not be speaking for the next several seconds as anyone affiliated directly with NWA. I'm going to be speaking other than speaking as a talent. Man, sometimes the toxicity levels in those live chats on YouTube was about more than I could take as a person who worked for the company. And that's on a personal level. That I'm not saying that that's our corporate perspective on this, but that was my perspective on it. I do feel bad for the sense of community that people were able to build in that chat space. Obviously, I am very compassionate and empathetic to that because I enjoy many of the people who participated in those chats. But overall, sometimes I wondered how so many good people got trapped in such a bad space. You know, that was my perspective on that. I would love to see places like the Alliance blog continue their, you know, their providing a source for y'all to come together and chat about what you have watched. I would love for people, whether it's myself or others who stream NWA related content on Twitch and other places like that, to continue to provide a space for people to gather. In terms of the live chat for the premieres, that unfortunately is something that we'll have to reflect back on fondly for now.
Dumb question, not just because you said it now, it triggered in my brain. Is there any chance in the near, not too far future that maybe Pollo could cover like season 1 of NWA Power on Twitch? I think that would be very interesting. And like I haven't been to all of them, but I used to jump in on some of those Joe Kazana promotions that you would play and talk about on your live streams. That would be something that'd be very interesting that I think a lot of NWA fans could enjoy if you went back in time and did those live streams.
I think it'd be super fun. I actually don't know that there's anything necessarily that would prevent me from continuing to stream episodes of NWA Power via my Twitch. You know what I mean? Yeah. I'm not certain of that. I don't think that there's anything that would prevent me from doing that any differently than I would have been, you know, prevented from doing it when we were on YouTube. Yeah. And that's something that we continue to do every Tuesday. You know, like Tuesdays for me, on my Twitch, Tuesday is NWA Day, and we'll usually stream the latest episode and then a classic or 2 classic episodes of NWA from back in the day. So those are still things I think that are available, and those might be workarounds. Even sadly, that might be the quickest workaround for some of our international fans.
Okay, so another dumb question for you, and maybe you can't answer this, but so we know that the deal is exclusivity with CW. Does that mean that there will be no more original wrestling content on YouTube? I know that this is the NWA podcast will continue to remain with you know, Joe and Kyle and Danny, and of course our best friend Gary Horn. They'll be doing that every Monday still, I believe. But will there be any more content available on YouTube, or will it just be a place for that?
I don't think, yeah, like I don't have all the details of that. My strong suspicion is that there will continue to be original content on YouTube. I can say, after having worked as a producer backstage at this last round of television tapings, you know, there's always stuff that we film behind the scenes and tape behind the scenes in terms of like dark matches, things like that, that are not necessarily intended for inclusion in an upcoming episode of Power, but those could be increased so that we have original content that will go exclusively to YouTube. And those are all things that we could bubble up, you know, in terms of like, this is an idea that I bubble above me, and they bubble up and eventually gets to Billy. Who's like 3 levels above me.
Well,
that last level is a real big level. You know what I mean? But still, right.
For what it's worth, I was in Nashville for the tapings after the 75th. I know that there was a lot of content that appeared to be filmed. I don't know, maybe the cameramen were shutting off and just mimicking, pantomiming the whole thing. But there was a lot of matches that were filmed but never released. And I get that they weren't regular characters with the brand, and maybe they were just testing things out. I understand all that, but I think that'd be something to bubble up to the top. If you're taking suggestions, even a match or 2 just from dark matches and stuff, I think would help quelch the thirst of the international audience. Plus, you know, again, watch Power on CW. It'd be a great way to continue advertising and pushing to the app. You know, I think that's the key word, pushing to the app.
And I also think that we will be presumably seeing content from our territories coming to our YouTube. These are just guesses. These, remember, for those of you who are watching who want a like a broad spectrum kind of what my role is, I've got obviously key responsibilities, but I'm also part of the brainstorming committee, basically. I'm an idea person, so I'm like, what about this, what about this, what about this?
I just realized how pale I look in this light right now, and you're looking tan and everything, and I look like I'm not goth, I promise.
Goth.
I feel like it though, right? Like I look really
Jake
white.
called it goth.
Real quick, DKM, our good pal, he says, is WWE Raw on Netflix the best thing that could happen to the NWA on CW?
I don't have an answer for that, but what I will say is I think that having probably the most recognized name in weekly televised pro wrestling be available on an app does a great deal to legitimize any other wrestling product that's on an app. There cannot be any longer the idea that for you to live up to the standards of a WWE Raw that you must be on televised broadcast network television. This is a situation where many companies, the National Wrestling Alliance included, will benefit in terms of people perceiving us to be of equal quality as other app-based products. So, just on CW alone, there are two of us that are available on the CW app. One is WOW and one is NWA. And, if we both feel a little bit more legitimized as a result of Raw going to Netflix, I don't think that's bad for either of us. I don't think it's bad for anybody.
And I think the whole idea that it's being normalized, you said it, the biggest brand in pro sports, pro wrestling, is now going to be, that they've always said that Raw was the premier brand of
the flagship of all of professional wrestling.
Right. And when you think about it, like, let's just be clear on this. Netflix just paid $5 billion to have the rights to stream the WWE program for the next 10 years. That's kind of what the Saudi Arabia government paid to have those live events for the WWE. Let's also take into consideration that when Disney purchased the Star Wars, the Lucasfilms, I believe the price they paid was about $4 billion. So let's just put that into perspective. And I know, the economy is constantly changing and evolving and all that, but for the right to have Raw on Netflix, Netflix paid more than what Disney paid to own Star Wars. If that doesn't speak to the volume of the popularity of pro wrestling, I don't know what does.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that I feel is going to be part of the continuing shift of the landscape of what it means to be whether an entertainment company in and of itself. Like, how many shows never got to go into existence because they couldn't get a broadcast spot, but now they might be able to get could have gotten a place on Hulu, or could have gotten a place on Netflix, or any number of other streaming networks where people could tune in at their leisure. And one of the things I will tell you, and I know this for a fact, speaking of streaming, and it came into my head, and I want to put this out there before we forget. Our products will not be dropping in entire seasons on the CW. You're going to be getting them 1 week at a time.
Which is, I think that's a super smart play. Like, I get it for a lot of us, like that want to binge watch it, but I think, if I watched one episode of Power and then waited next week and watched it and build that kind of ritual of watching it one episode a week, when it comes to that next signature live event, I'm going to be more excited about it, as opposed to if they dropped all, 2 week like 2 months of episodes all at once, and I binge it. Then by the time the Signature Live event comes up, I might not even care anymore. It'll have been such a disconnect from when the episodes aired to getting to that Signature Live event. Everything is a build to that next SLE that they have to continue to tell that story to get us to keep coming back for more. And if they dump it all at once, it's like, okay, I'm done. Now I wait another like 2 months to find out what happens next. It's not good for storytelling.
There are possibilities, because we just had a call with the CW network last week, and I got to sit in on that. And there were no like ground shaking revelations from that particular phone call. But one of the things that became very clear is that we will be dropping episodically week to week to week. So 52 weeks a year, ideally 52 weeks of content. And we might be seeing some of our back catalog of content show up for binging purposes.
Now, let me ask you another question. And we have a ton of more comments here, and we'll get to you guys, I promise. But, this is my show, so I'm going to ask some of the questions I want answers to. With that whole idea, has there been any discussion about increased taping dates? Like, as it's been with the NWA, it'll be 1 or 2 days of straight filming, because it's probably more affordable to have all the talent there all at once, one building all at once, and filming all of that. Will there be more frequent tapings, or will it continue to be the way it has been?
At this point, I've heard nothing of increased taping amounts. Remember, like we're able to, we just did 2 days in Florida, and we cranked out all of the content that will come to light between now and Hard Times 2024 in Dothan, Alabama on March 2nd. So between the beginning of January and the beginning of March, we've got, it doesn't look like we've got anything else in the can in terms of dates to be taping. So it's going to be similar taping schedule. This is for those who are not familiar, this is not unlike what Impact or Lucha Underground before us did. Many places do tapings on this type of schedule, because it is the most economically feasible. You pack as much time, work into a weekend. You don't have to fly talent in multiple days. It's very, very costly. I mean, just to have me there, we're talking a lot of money, and I'm on the low part of the the food chain in terms of pay. So for people who are much higher up, it's going to be a lot more to have them there.
You have a fan club here, and it's not just Pollo, it's also Paul. Like, the people love you. Lamb says Paul has such a great voice for commentary and documentaries. To be honest, if they do a documentary about the NWA, Paul should be the voice of it. So that's pretty cool.
Well, I appreciate that, because I'm sitting right here. I want to put out this. Today I had to pick up my inhaler and my antibiotics because I've got a respiratory infection. I have not been myself for like 3 weeks, and I finally had a doctor's appointment today. So to know that I still sound decent, I appreciate that.
Gary said that a lot.
What? Say that again.
Gary had mentioned on the This Is the NWA podcast that a lot of folks came home a little under the weather from Florida. We
did. Luckily, it wasn't like a mass COVID outbreak, but I think that I'm sitting with my doctor today. I was like, look, I'm not really too concerned about this, because about half of everybody I know has some kind of sinus issues right now or respiratory issues, and it's just a thing that's going around. So because of the fact that I can feel my sinuses all up here super congested, and I've been downing Dayquil like it's going out of style, I finally went to the doctor. They're like, we're going to get you on this inhalant, which will help your lungs. We're going to get you on these antibiotics, which will clear your sinuses. So I'll be up and kicking. They said within 2 to 3 days, it should be mostly starting to get it under control. But thank you for that, Lamb. I appreciate the compliments. I have a degree in broadcasting, which people don't know about. So, and
real quick,
I see her. That darn dirty no-gooder wasn't with us in Tampa. She was protesting something, and and she was deeply missed. She was deeply missed in the 15 minutes that I would have had to share with her, because I was running my brains out. But she was certainly missed in Tampa. And
one of these days, I'm going to invite Pam to do the pre-party with me, because I mean, she's done everything else with the NWA. Might as well jump on one of our pre-parties.
I love embarrassing Pam. This is me getting to share a little behind the scenes things. You know, when I was putting together the NWA magazine initially, I went to Pam and I had this whole pitch for her. If you haven't seen it, if you're one of the viewers who are watching this and you haven't actually downloaded the NWA magazine, periodically Pam has a column in there, and she's referred to as Superfan Pam. and she's a super fan.
She is.
And I specifically went to her because she has such a unique perspective on everything. And, you know, I love teasing her and embarrassing her. And so I'm very observant. So I'll spot little things that are happening, and I'll like sneak photos that she doesn't know are happening. And I'll just text them to her, and she's like, oh my God. I love her so much.
Pam is great. I got to meet Pam. Finally, I met Pam at 75, but like, we've been at so many shows together, and it's again, like, I'm a little socially awkward too. Like, I don't like to go out and just, hey, it's J Cal. How's it going? I'm very introverted here on the podcast, but in real life, that's not me. So like, I was, hey, Pam, but like, she was there in Mexico. I didn't bother her. I think I saw Pam even at the inaugural TV tapings, I think. And if not the inaugural, then pretty much everyone since then, because every time I've ever been at an NWA event, Pam has been there too. So
look, I was not on that trip to Mexico, but
which is bullshit, by the way.
If my sources are correct, I heard that it's a good thing you didn't bother Pam, because according to my sources, she was drunker than the worm at the bottom of a tequila. So the whole time, that's what I got to say about that, Pam.
Carrie Morton too. So that's another story for another time.
That's a pretty commonplace thing for the road. Okay, y'all, I have to tell you, this star, I'm a huge Wonder Woman fan, in case people haven't noticed by all the tattoos I have. And this star is supposed to be perfectly placed in the middle of my head so that I look like I'm wearing Wonder Woman's swim cap. And the fact that I'm able to see myself while doing this and it gets off center makes me crazy.
I feel the same way, and that's kind of why I like sitting at an angle, because like my big head and the hat always seem to bounce off of each other. So, a statement more. Actually, let's get back to the question, then I'll keep going forward. Chris Drummond says, "Could the website start adding the territory dates on the official page?"
That is something that will be happening, Chris, and I can't even pawn that off on anybody else. That's my responsibility, and we're going to be doing. We're going to be making a few more updates as relates to our territories. When you specifically are asking, and this is going to take forever to get this answer, but when we're asking about the territory dates, I think you're talking about the live event dates for Joe Galli Promotions and Exodus Pro. We will be having. I mean, we have historically had some of those posts on the website. We haven't had them in a good little bit, because we were heading into our SLE, the Signature Live event. We were, and you know, they sort of fall on top of that. I don't know that we'll have all of those territory dates available on the website, but we will be working towards getting some results from those, as well as presumably, you know, some of those upcoming events with our territories are going to be co-promoted as well, and that will always end up on the site. Good call out, Chris.
See, and Chris calls himself the villain, but like what people don't know is he is definitely a diehard NWA fan. And although like his taste range from everything from AEW, New Japan, his heart still belongs to the NWA. We go back to, you know, the early 2000s on the old NWA message board. That's how long we have been at it. So he's a good guy. I like him a lot.
My idea of what a villain is are people who spend time in the chat, who have very, very little positive to say about the product, who have horrible things to say about talent who are busting their ass, and who have limited suggestions that could improve things. Those to me are villains, you know, because they are basically just disruptors. There's no, and I could name some people, but I'm not going to. But let me just say this. There was a long list of them on those YouTube chats that I had blocked because they had nothing positive to contribute. So, Chris, I don't want to upset the apple cart and tell you that your tagline of the villain doesn't necessarily apply in my eyes. But when individuals come to me with things that are catches that they've seen, like, hey, this could be improved upon, and they offer a suggestion for a solution, that is not the same as somebody who just constantly complains.
Agreed. Our pal Dave Scooby, who you might know from the Other Line guys, says maybe do a control center type show that has highlights of NWA champions out on the indies and maybe wrestler rankings, as well as advertised upcoming events and tapings. I mean, I know that's pretty that's a full-time job for somebody, but I think that would be pretty incredible if you're taking suggestions.
I want to tell you, Dave Scooby, the funny thing about this particular suggestion. So we were in the WEDU studios, which is the famous, very famous PBS station studios where Florida Championship Wrestling taped for generations in Tampa. That's where we did our last round of television tapings in Tampa. Yeah. And we were doing the backstage interviews, you know, with Mae Valentine, and we had a room set aside for that. And so we were filming on one side, and on the flip side of the room was this gorgeous, gorgeous set. And in the middle of it was like kind of like a ESPN type of set where there's like sort of like a pseudo round table with seats around it and big, beautiful backdrops. It was called Florida This Week or Florida This Morning or something. And I looked at Joe Galli and I was like, hey, Joe, what if we filmed amazing, this is NWA This Week shit at this set, you know? And Joe's like, man, if only we had time. Really, what it comes down to, honestly, is if we had time. When we're at these, what you're talking about is such an incredible idea. And I think most of us would love to turn Monday's, you know, live stream that we do every week on the NWA Extra. We would love to turn that into exactly something like you're talking about, like I'm talking about, where we're sitting at a table and we're like, you know, kind of really hashing it out. That is something that, unfortunately, a far better financial situation than we're presented with in terms of like what we have to spend on budget. We're not in dire straits. I don't want to make it sound like that, but that's a lot of money to quality produce something like that. And I think we would all love it if it was only possible and we only had the time.
I think when the whole idea that, okay, now we're on CW, obviously there's a higher ROI than what you were getting on YouTube. We know that because there's upgrades to the set. I mean, I've seen more and more talent announce that they've signed or are part of the NWA. I mean, obviously there's going to be growing pains on both sides of it, but I feel like financially, and I don't know anything, right? I'm not in those boardrooms and I haven't seen any financials, but I imagine that the ROI working with CW is going to be much higher than what it was with YouTube. And if there is the only thing that I could say about the pay-per-views, and I know I'll get to that in a second, but if the NWA walked away from making pay-per-views to signature live events, I'm sure there was a financial incentive to do so. But that's something that Pam asked about was, how does everyone feel about the move away from pay-per-views? Paul, I know you can't answer like specifics, but am I right? Was there a financial reason to leave pay-per-views?
Well, again, this is something I don't have concrete information. What you're hearing from me is what I've gleaned from experience, not coming directly from anybody above me, certainly not coming from William Patrick Corgan.
Yeah.
What I can tell people is that the broadcast truck alone to film and broadcast a pay-per-view event costs $100,000. $100,000. So if you are a WWE, that's nothing, because they own that truck. In fact, they probably own 5 of those trucks. When you are talking about the National Wrestling Alliance, we presumably rent that truck. I don't know that, but I can say for a fact we don't own it. So those that was something I think that we probably moved away from, just because, can you imagine how many pay-per-views you have to sell to make back $100,000 for a truck?
Yeah.
So with that in mind, like, I think that there was a financial reason. The other thing I do think is that this signature live event that we did in Fort Lauderdale, in the past, that would have presumably been a pay-per-view event.
Yeah.
And that it was incredible. It was top to bottom. That event was incredible. I will tell people that up front. And the beautiful part about it is, guess what? You're going to see it incorporated into episodes of NWA Power. So you are going to get that quality of broadcast material every week. And something I may not have shared in the past, but, you know, WPC, William Patrick Corgan, told our entire team that we are going to a new platform. We are upping the ante for the way we are presenting our materials, the way it looks, the way it's being received, have all been taken to the next notch. And everyone's match output is expected to follow suit. You know, like, we are going to see an increased quality. There's a difference between sort of like a television quality and a pay-per-view quality.
Right.
And the expectation now, I think, for everyone is that we will always turn out pay-per-view quality matches.
I mean, just like, and again, going back to the WWE, there's a huge difference between watching a Monday Night Raw episode and watching the Royal Rumble this weekend. There's a huge difference in the match quality. There's a huge difference in the impact style of wrestling. So, I mean, if what you're saying is that the wrestling will be improved, you know, which I think the wrestling's always been pretty good, you know, if I say so myself. But
yeah,
I think
but the intensity and the intention, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for the intensity of a pay-per-view match. We're looking for the intention of a pay-per-view match. And I think that our talent are ready to turn it out. We realize that this is, you know, we're taking the next major step forward with the company, and everybody is there to make sure that we hit that mark.
There's a ton of comments still here in the chat. So, guys, hang with us. We're going to try to get to all of them. Paul, are you pressed for time? Are you able to hang out with us for a little bit longer?
I'm able to hang out with y'all.
All right. Then we might go. Tell the affiliates we're going long today. James H. Jackson says, with the champions in the NWA now defending a lot more on the indies and territories, how do you not spoil results with the taping schedule as it is? I mean,
yeah, that's a great question, James. It's a challenge that we're always going to face. It's the challenge that everybody faces. You know, like, we have kept under wraps, for example, the outcomes of our most recent premium live event. But if you see so and so on the indies somewhere defending their title, and we haven't revealed that they did or did not retain, that's a different story. I don't think we have an answer for that, other than to say that is an age-old problem. The difference now between now and 50 years ago is that there's the internet.
Yeah. I mean, look, I haven't. The day it happened, I kind of looked for results, and I told you everyone was stiff-lipped. No one was saying anything, which I think is incredible. Speaks volumes about the character of the people in the audience. Or maybe they're just not internet savvy. I don't know, but I couldn't even find pictures from the event. But I know that stuff did get leaked a little bit later. I don't know that there's any place you could go looking for like full results. And I think that's kind of nice for the audience who doesn't want things to be spoiled. It's difficult in this day and age to have any sporting event without it being spoiled, because as soon as the baseball game's over, the article's up on ESPN. But now in this time in space we're in, you have EC3 still defending the title of upcoming events. And then, obviously we're not talking about it because, the result between him and Matt Cardona hasn't happened on television yet. So it's going to always be one of those things. And of course, cards subject to change. That's always on every single wrestling event. And if it's not, it should be, because you never know what's going to happen. But, I recently saw Joe Galli Promotions advertising our world television champion Mims, and, bearing the result of what happens in Florida, he will still be champion when he goes to Joe Galli Promotions, or he will not be champion bearing what happens from Florida. So I guess needless to say, it is what it is. And there's not really a better way to do it. So it kind of just, you have to live with it. Right.
And I agree with that. At the same time, this is me being just a wrestling fan. My friends that work for Impact just had a big weekend, the same weekend that we did. They just had some great television tapings in Orlando this past weekend. Did I go read the spoilers? Absolutely. Will I still tune in to watch the show because I want to see how it plays out? Yes, I will. The other thing that I can tell you, this is something that I can say with 100% certainty, and someone like Pam, who is in the audience, can actually attest to from the flip side, which I've been on many times, going to one of our television tapings and watching what actually happens in the studio at the tapings. You might know the match results or what the outcome, but it is not until you're listening to it and watching it with the audio from what the announcers are saying and what's actually happening, like, what you're hearing being said about it. It may make zero sense. I've been to multiple tapings for NWA as a talent and literally had no idea what was going on. It wasn't until I had been there in some capacity that was outside of just filling my particular role that I was like, oh, okay, so now I know what story is being told out. I can promise you, I can 100% guarantee that people who were at our show on the Sunday TV taping in Tampa have zero idea what they watched play out. I know, because I know the stories, but they would have no clue whatsoever what they're actually watching, which is a beautiful thing.
With that being said, I was in the audience again for the TV tapings, and you certainly get a better feel for what's happening. But when you see it on TV with the commentary and what's kind of being built up, everything makes a little bit more sense. And obviously there's a way that you shoot it, and you're still producing a story with the vignettes in the back and everything else. So I get it. I hear what you're saying. And
I'm telling you right now, like you can watch two people, you can be sitting in the audience and you see this person is facing this person, and maybe it's you're getting to watch the match, but what if there's a stipulation? What if there's something riding on that victory, or you don't know? And those are the things that make it truly interesting.
Our pal KM says, shifting gears a little, why doesn't the NWA want to show that audience on the studio tapings?
I don't have an answer for that. I do know that I don't think there's a reason we haven't wanted to show the audience. I do think that the tapings you went to, Jay Cal, were in the Nashville studios.
Yeah, anyway.
So the audience there was multiple rows, like 150 deep, but they were just at the back of the room. Yeah. And that's because of the way that particular venue is set up. The setup, and oh my God, the new, y'all, I'm just going to tell you, for those of you who are going to tune in February 6th for the first episode of Power on the CW network app, you're going to see something entirely new. It is I'm sure that there's probably photos of it that are floating around already, but I was blown away. Remember, this is my second set of TV tapings in the same space. And when I walked in there, it was like walking into a different world. It is so different. It is so amazing looking, and you get to see the audience, all of these things, all the things.
And that's the actual studio. That's not the stream the signature live event.
Right. So when we get to the point where we get to the studio taping, the studio looks so frigging good. It looks so good. It looks so good. The talent was like, we were standing and like all of us were like, come in here, you gotta see this. You gotta see this. That's how exciting it was. We were like dragging each other into the studio, be like, and then we would walk in and we'd be like, it looks so good.
So will you guys be filming, I guess, more exclusively in that studio, or where will you be? Like, is it going to continue to kind of be like a carousel of studios that you use? Like, will you be back at Skyway? Will you be back in Chicago at some point, or is this the home for tapings now?
I think that from what I understood, I think that we'll be back in Tampa, a fair deal. Number one, I think that I can't speak to this, but my impression is that we very much like being in the historic Florida Championship Wrestling studio. Yeah. Number one. And number two, I know that, we have invested in a set that is built for that studio, pretty much, I'm going to guess. I bet it could be applied elsewhere, but it is very kind of in tune to that space. And I think that they also offer us the opportunity to store our belongings there. So I do think that that's going to be, and we have a huge, just like there's a benefit of filming in Nashville because there's a huge amount of our talent that lives there. There's a huge amount of our talent that lives in Florida. So both of those are pretty good for us. I do think that we will be probably potentially, again, this is something I can't speak to because I don't really know the answer, but I would guess that whenever we have one of our signature live events, there's a possibility that we would find a local television studio or something to that effect to get us, through that. But it's also possible that we could do, a signature live event someplace like Dothan and then record enough content through that signature live event that it could put us, back in Tampa 5 weeks later or something like that.
Yeah, and I feel like that seems like to be be honest, it's a smart business decision. The studio in Tampa, from what I've heard and what you just explained, sounds beautiful. But at the meantime, like flying back and forth to Florida, even though a lot of the talent might live there, it's still like it's pricey, and it's still a business. I know it's Billy still would like to make money doing this and not just spend it all on transportation costs. Let me get to some more comments. This is just a positive comment, and I think James and I are sharing the same brain on this one. For me, as a fan of the signature live events, the pay-per-view quality matches for free on an app that has no sign up. That's a win for, again, fans stateside. Of course, so we talked about the what the international audience can expect for the time being. There's no real update yet, but hopefully that's something that comes to it sooner than later. Mike Media M5, we call him Demonetized Mike here on this channel, right? And EC3 is on podcasts with people trolling him as current NWA, or introducing him as current NWA champion.
Trolling him.
Well, I'm sorry, he had a
I mean, and you know what? Like, what a distinction that is. I can't speak highly enough of EC3's desire and drive to represent the National Wrestling Alliance and his making himself available to speak on podcasts, to go on places and represent us. And that's something that, we have been in dire need of for quite some time.
Can you put in a good word for me? Because he didn't have time for me when I asked him last time. Polka Dot Pam says 100% you need the commentary and the backstage interviews for context. Many times I've asked my talent friends for clarity after a taping.
And many times her talent friends have been like, I don't know. Throw one ask me. I just show up and do my job.
Hey Gary, what happened here? Jay, I don't know, man. I was busy. Fair enough.
I mean, I thank God I had that headset and I got to sit in on all of my talent meetings beforehand, because otherwise I'd had zero idea what happened to this last round of tapings.
Our pal Dodie says, until I can see someone like Kratos or Wrecking Ball more times in Power episodes than Rolando or Gags, and less of triple threat or intergender tag nonsense, that's what I consider to be new. And I think that's in regards to the higher quality of matches. And what I'd say to Dodie, and you could take your own point to it, Paul, but I just think they're trying to step to that next level now. And if the matches are going to improve, they're going to improve every step of the way. If you're not a fan of intergender wrestling, we know going into the Signature Live event that's going to debut on February 6th, at some point we're going to have our women's television champion, Max the Impaler, take on our world television champion, men's champion, Mims, and at whoever wins that match is going to be responsible for defending both titles. So we're going to have to find out what's going to happen next. So if you're not a fan of intergender wrestling, there's always the fast forward button.
Dodie, I'm not going to give you too many spoilers, but if you're against Gags and Rolando and intergender, I think there's going to be ample things to tide you over on these episodes. But I think that we're definitely seeing a new era of what we present on NWA. And I personally am not against what we're starting to see, because NWA still is steeped in tradition, but we are becoming more of a buffet of options for you. Like, I will tell you, I am obviously a huge fan of the historic roots of the National Wrestling Alliance. But I sometimes stream, these old 1985, 86, and by sometimes I mean every Tuesday, stream these old 1985, 86 episodes of Georgia Championship Wrestling. And it feels like I'm watching the same match over and over and over. So as much as I love that historically, I think I've become attuned to getting some variety in professional wrestling right now. And we can still appeal to people who love that history, but also give them, servings of something that's a little more current in what's happening in the world today. And as a character fall into that category, I'm not mad about it.
As a side note, have you ever went back and watched the California Championship Wrestling from like the mid 80s to early 90s?
I haven't. I'll have to find it.
It's awful. You'll love it. Dodie also says, Florida Championship Wrestling Studios, can we see Power doing tapings at the former Tampa Sportatorium? That place is so tiny, but still has a legendary venue.
I don't foresee us doing the Tampa Sportatorium offhand. That's something that hasn't come up in any conversations. But we are doing our tapings at the WEDU PBS studio in Tampa, which is where the studio tapings of Florida Championship Wrestling were filmed.
More comments. My pal Traducus, who always gives me a hard time, says, with there being no sign up for the app and the fact that the programming is free, already shows that the NWA is doing better than the NFL in the app department. Yeah, I mean, this is. I dislike the fact that the app is not a worldwide app. It does alienate some of the audience. To Paul's credit, to the NWA's credit, they're trying to work around that, but it's a process that's still going to take time, and hopefully it's sooner than later. But I mean, as somebody who is going to benefit from it, again, like Paul said, I watch a lot of stuff on my phone. I can just jump on here, and now I can literally watch the NWA on my phone. I can go to the gym, watch it on my phone. I mean, you can do that with YouTube as well. But I mean, it's
when you were watching on the app, did you notice the quality difference in terms of its?
I don't know if it's something with my eyesight. I don't know if it's me because my eyes aren't great. But when you said that, I was like, huh. I don't recall it looking as vibrant or better than what I saw. But I will always preface that by saying I don't have the best eyesight anyways.
I just thought it looked so much crisper and so much more vibrant on the CW app. So yeah, I mean that is something that to me was a huge benefit in its own right.
Our pal, our pal Rick Del Santos says, "Hey, I love that California Championship Wrestling. Why? Why do you love that?" Sean Mega says, "I noticed the difference."
Yeah, you can definitely see the difference, Sean Mega.
Let's see. I skipped Chris's question, but I think this is another good one. Will the World League Wrestling and NWA show be a power taping?
I don't have an answer for that. I don't. I'm not trying to blow that off. I just don't have an answer.
Triducus goes, honestly, intergender matches are fine as long as there isn't a huge size difference. Like Max is very believable to kick anyone's ass, and really wish they would have kicked the tires. Sorry, I didn't read the whole statement. Yeah, let me rephrase that. I think a lot of us were happy to see EC3 win the title.
Yeah, I'd have personally paid to see Max and Tyrus one-on-one.
That would have, yeah. And I've look, I don't claim to be some sort of insider, Paul. I don't have. You're my connection. I know you. That's about it. I know you and Gary. I don't have all the inside info or anything else like that. But I know from other people that Max is kind of a beast, and Angry Max is really it's not just what you see on TV, folks. I don't think Max in real life grunts while they walk to the grocery store, but I think if someone approached Max and wanted to have a fight, that they would really not be happy with the end result.
Look, Max is one of my favorite people just in general. That's a blanket statement. Max is one of my favorite people. I'm not a small person and I'm not a scared person, but I'm not going to piss off Max. I'll just say that. And Max doesn't have two bad knees. So that
Showgrain TV says signature event quality matches on the free streaming platform reminds me of World Class. While other territories weren't airing main cards, WCCW was airing just about everything. And I think that's going to be where they have an opportunity to excel. There's a lot of wrestling programs out there, but if the NWA, like you said, Paul, are able to put on more intense matches, and we're going to see pay-per-view style matches on a free broadcast, I think that's going to be a huge win for the NWA, and especially when the market is so competitive. And I mean,
it is.
You look at just on the top, you've got the WWE, you've got AEW, you've got TNA Wrestling, you've got the NWA, you've got MLW, you've got, and that's not including Ring of Honor, but then you've got New Japan. It's accessible through Access or New Japan World. You've got the United Wrestling Network that's available in a lot of markets. And then there's so many independents out there that, again, you could see via streaming apps like Fight TV or IWTV. Yeah. So there is so many avenues for people to watch wrestling. And like you had mentioned, it's a buffet. You can find any kind of wrestling that you want, but I think where the NWA has an opportunity to kind of stand up and take a different approach by putting on some of those, again, for free, those more intense, more a better variety of wrestling, I think. And I think that's going to be good for it.
I try not to ever really compare us to anybody else. We can't, there's no reason to that, to do that. And frequently it's a no-win because other places are bigger. Other places have deeper pockets. Other places have a wider roster. They're better distribution, whatever they want to, whatever they want to use as a metric to make themselves appear better than us. What I do is look at what the NWA is putting out now, and I do believe that it's better than what we were putting out 6 months ago. And so I compare us against ourselves, and that to me says that we are growing and we're moving in the right direction. those are the things those are the kind of things that I compare myself on. Like, I don't compare myself and my success to other people's success. I compare myself to myself. And, you know, my 2024 is already starting out better than my 2023. And my 2023 was pretty lit. So I'm pretty good with the idea that this year is going to track better. NWA's 2023 was very good. I think that NWA's 2024 is going to be that much better.
As somebody who's followed the NWA for a very long time and watching, you know, the hills and valleys, the peaks and plateaus of the NWA, and knowing that, you know, 2023 was probably the most active year that Billy has had as NWA owner. You know, that we saw the titles travel to Mexico. We saw the titles travel to Australia. There were more live events than ever before. I mean, that in and of itself is incredible. And not just TV tapings, but actual live wrestling events. The NWA certainly has taken a step forward in 2023, and I don't think there's any turning back now. I don't think, you know, that there's any you know, right turn off this trip. I think it's, you know, above and beyond. It's keep moving forward, and I feel like, you know, it's already off to a good start. I mean, so many tapings already happened in January. So many events have already happened. And, you know, we've got the, of course, with the affiliates, there's more shows happening this weekend. There'll be more shows happening next month. And then, not this weekend, next weekend, excuse me. And then, of course, you know, before you know it, the new season of Power is going to air on CW. It just feels like there's a lot of, again, positive momentum for the NWA.
And I want to remind people that, in 2022, Billy Corgan said in 2023, you're going to see more travel, more touring, more live events from the NWA. People questioned that. People thought, you know, people second guessed that. And I think that hands down, whether it turned out in a way that was expected by them, or the coupling of NWA touring with the Smashing Pumpkins and going on this global type of tour, it doesn't matter how it came to fruition. It came to fruition. Billy made good on what he said he was going to present to the fans, and we got to see it actually come to life in front of us.
Here's another one that you might not be able to answer, but, you know, because the Rumble's this weekend and we're on the road to WrestleMania, obviously all eyes are focused on Philadelphia. Our boy Chris Drummond says, okay, on the Monday podcast, they teased Philadelphia. So Mania is there. Is there a chance that there'll be some NWA representation at Mania weekend? Is that anything that you've heard about, or is that anything you can discuss?
Let me just say that I'm going to be in Philadelphia for Mania weekend with the collective, which is GCW. Yeah. I will be there hosting Effie's Big Gay Brunch 9. That's a given. What I will tell you that I know for a fact, NWA and the City of Brotherly Love could see a partnership very soon. I do not think that it's going to be during Mania weekend. I think that fans in Philadelphia should be on the lookout for NWA in 2024, though.
Trideca says, some of the stuff I've seen on IWTV, I wish I never seen, but glad that there's other platforms for promotions to showcase their events for better or for worse. Southern California, I mean, we've been known for multiple promotions. There's Lucha Vavoom, which is very popular. There was UPW, that was a Southern California affiliate of the WWE at one point. XPW is a very big promotion that has roots here in California that goes back and forth between Philly and Cali. And I went to one XPW event, and I would never go to another one. And that's my taste, you know. And even when Camille and Tom were at XPW, it's like, it's a pass. Mecha Wolf was working for them. I'm like, I'll go to TJ. Paul, I'll go to TJ. I'll get my passport out. I'll cross the border to see Mecha Wolf wrestle. I won't go to Chatsworth to see an XPW show.
Well, maybe you can come to Chatsworth to see me on February 29th, because I'll be there on February 29th. But at the same time, XPW, the one thing I will say positive for XPW, they had at least one very good match between Taya and Camille before Taya came to NWA to challenge Camille.
look, I'm not saying that they don't have some good quality. Like I get hazed by this all the time, but I thought Joey Chaos was great. I used to enjoy Vampiro's work there as well, but I would not go buy a ticket because I did not want to see deathmatch wrestling. You know what I mean?
Understandable. It's understandable.
Sean Mega says, "Hey Pollo, who do you consider to be the main eventers on the men's side?"
Ooh, of the National Wrestling Alliance, I would say our main event wrestlers, our main event players at this time, EC3, Cardona whenever he's with us, Silas, Tom Latimer. I would throw I mean, I think that it's very, very easy to float Jax Dane into that category. So those are the people that come to mind right away.
This one's a good question from Traducus, and I think I could probably answer it just as easy as you could, Paul. But it says, honestly, who was the last champion to travel outside the USA, Canada, before Billy Corgan bought the company? Rob Conway? Well, yeah, Conway definitely was one of these guys he took the title to Wrestle Kingdom. You have to give praise to Rob Conway for being the right place at the right time with the right look. And was able to work with New Japan quite regularly. In fact, him and Jack Stane took the tag titles there as well. In terms of taking titles international, we know that Tim Storm took the titles to Japan. Took it once, was supposed to take it again, and then of course Billy bought the NWA, so that changed things quite significantly. But yeah, I mean, Tim Storm took the title to Japan. It was a smaller promotion. It wasn't New Japan. It was like called Dragon Star or something like that. It was a smaller indie, but still, I mean, the fact that you can't deny the fact that when the 10 pounds of gold is suited in another territory, another country, another part of the world, I mean, I think that shows just how the affinity for that title that the wrestling community has, not just here in the US, but in Japan and in Canada and the UK, where we've seen, a lot of champions in the last few years. And even before, like, you have to give credit to Adam Pearce for taking that title to Canada, to Mexico, to Europe, to Japan. You have to take Blue Demon Jr., who also took the title to Canada, to obviously Mexico, but to the UK, to Italy, to Japan. I mean, you have to recognize those guys. Even though I don't care for them, you have to give credit to the Sheik for being able to take the title to Japan. And before I forget, too, Tokyo Monster Kahagas was the last NWA World Champion to defend in the Dominican Republic. So again, these are all admirable champions that did international defenses, but obviously to the extent of what Nick Aldis did is still kind of the standard bearer for the NWA. Yep. And I think you can only hope that EC3 is on that path. I know he missed his title defense in Canada over the weekend. Our own Tim Alliance Gold missed out on that. It was kind of bummed, but enjoyed the show nonetheless. And I know that EC3 in the past has made right for those title defenses that he's missed. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see EC3 in Canada soon. And I believe he has
defended out here this past weekend. He was supposed to defend out here as well, but due to some injuries was unable to.
Yeah. So I as much as I'm a huge Adam Pearce guy, and people will know that I say that Nick Aldis's run as world's heavyweight champion, his first run as champion, is like unmatched in this modern day. I really feel like EC3 has all the right tools to surpass what Nick Aldis did, and that's saying a lot. That's like hand on heart. That's a great. If you could top what Nick Aldis did in that first run, that's remarkable. So
I think it goes beyond having the tools. I think it has to do a lot with the drive and motivation. He has the desire, because there are people, and this isn't specific to anybody in the NWA roster, but I've far too often encountered people who are just content with being rather than building upon. And EC3 definitely wants to build upon the legacy that we have.
Traducus thinks that maybe MTV might have been the better home for the NWA than CW. Look, I'm all for.
I think we'd have loved it.
revision of the Rock and Wrestling from yesteryear, especially if what's that actor's name? Dirk Bennett, I think was his name. Never mind. We'll keep moving forward. Lamb says we have too many in SoCal, but good for all the talents. I think he means promotions.
Yeah, but that's a great opportunity for any of us who want to travel.
Yeah. Dodie says, I just wish the NWA would never leave the chase at St. Louis, and we'll keep visiting them. It's the mecca of the NWA. Any word yet? Do we know if we're going back to St. Louis for the anniversary, or is that to be determined? To be determined. All right, let's keep moving forward.
I can't say.
No, that's that. And look, we appreciate you being here. I know that there's going to be shit.
Hey, look at what James says.
Yeah. Well, so there you go.
Let that coincide with the previous question.
There you go. Meanwhile, Chris Adonis being a traveling champion all over the world for the Stu Hart title. Yeah, like, look, and I know Pam is feeling sad. Chris Adonis is a great talent. I'm not taking one thing away from him. In fact, the Alliance guys have always thought that, Adonis and a Pollo partnership would be chef's kiss. But until that happens, I just want to see Adonis keep working, man. I want to see him, being able to take care of himself and get out there and wrestle everywhere he can go. Maybe at some point he will return to the NWA. Maybe he won't, but I don't begrudge that guy at all. And if at some point the stars align and we see him back in the NWA, everything he's doing right now just makes him more credible if he ever comes back to the National Wrestling Alliance.
Chris is such a top-notch guy, such a nice person.
He's a SoCal guy, so there it is. Tredeka says, "Oh wow, that's Pollo. Holy crap! Didn't realize the manager of champions is there. Totally starstruck. Look at that."
Well, thanks.
Tell you, Pollo, you got fans. EC3 missed a defense in Erie, Pennsylvania, but is making good on it. February 10th. Can't wait for John McChesney to be the new champ. John McChesney, former NWA Upstate champion, former NWA New York champion. I'm not counting EC3 out. But I hope for your sake it's a great match, Traducus. I know you've been talking about that for a few weeks now.
EC3 missed out a week and a half or 2 weeks full of matches because of some injuries. Like he got his ass kicked at Paranoia. It was a mutual ass kicking, but still.
Sean Mega brings up the failures of MTV Pro Wrestling in the past. MTV fumbled Wrestling Society X. And it was Lucha Libre USA, the Masked Warriors. I know because I might be the only person in the world who enjoyed it. But I thought it was fun. They still had that show air on Hulu for about 3 years after it was off the air.
MTV has a terrible history with anything wrestling related. So
when they did Heat on MTV, well, that was pretty all right. Polka Dot Pam. Chris Adonis is doing great things with the Stu Hart Championship and is now the World Wrestling Council Universal Champion. I mean,
that's huge.
That's very huge.
Pam.
And I think Brian Idol also captured a World Wrestling Council Championship too this weekend. Let's see. Noob has a question. Which NWA wrestler you don't see as a main event star? I know that the entire Alliance crews don't want to see Brian Idol as a main event star. I don't know if you can answer that without making any enemies.
Yeah, I'm not going to answer which one I don't see as a main event star specifically. I mean, I think that we have a lot of people. If you look at this in a really objective way, we have a lot of people who are not main event stars because they're newer, younger, up and coming. They're hungry. To be an actual main event star, you have to have been around for a prolonged period of time. You've had to succeed on a high level for an extended period of time, and you have to have name credibility and recognition. So, without like shitting on somebody, so to speak, I can say that there's a lot of talent on our roster that are not main event, like by the technical sense of it. But I think almost everybody on our roster has the ability to move into that main event place with the proper time, opportunity, and performance. That's one of the things that I think is so beautiful about us, because you can join us and within 2 seasons on our Power show, you can be repositioned where you are like primed and ready to go into that main event spot. But what will usually be the determining factor, there has to be that it factor, and there has to be that prolonged success to build the momentum with the fans, because the fans have to want you to be in that spot. They have to back you in some capacity.
So one person that comes to mind, and I'm not shitting on them because I think this person has a ton of potential, but Jordan Clearwater. I would be very surprised if Hard Times was announced that it'd be Jordan Clearwater versus EC3 for the 10 pounds of gold. That would be very surprising, even shocking, I would say. But that doesn't mean that I don't think that with the proper build and the proper opportunities that Jordan Clearwater couldn't be a superstar, couldn't be a main eventer. But, you know, as it is right now, I mean, we haven't seen a lot of Jordan Clearwater as of late. And if the switch were flipped, I certainly think I could see a storyline that gets us there, especially the association with EC3 from those tapings that took place after the 75th anniversary show.
At our TV tapings,
he wasn't there either.
Mm-mm.
So, and again, like Adonis, at some point, if the paths align, like, it would be great to see Jordan Clearwater back in the NWA. And if it doesn't happen, we still wish him all the success in the world. The great thing about being a wrestling fan is tribalism is bullshit, right? Like, you don't have to dislike a wrestler because he's no longer with your company that you support. You could go and like, look, my favorite guy is Samoa Joe. I'll say it here, and I've said it forever. I will watch Samoa Joe anywhere he goes. I don't necessarily watch AEW, but I went out of my way to try to find Samoa Joe versus Hook, which I thought was great. I don't know why everyone got so upset about it. And it doesn't matter to me that Joe's in AEW. I'll still support him wherever he's at. Likewise, if you're a Jordan Clearwater fan, or like Polka Dot Pam, Chris Adonis fan, it's awesome that you still show these guys support no matter where they go. Tribalism is bullshit. Doesn't even need to have a place in wrestling. Trust me that the wrestlers that are out there, like Paul said, I have friends in TNA. All these guys have relationships with other wrestlers and other companies, and they don't hate each other. They're not dismissive to each other. They're happy for the opportunities that they're getting. And
we're not at all that way. I mean, like I was texting with a friend of mine who is no longer under contract with us, and I was like, I was bummed not to see you, and the person's response was, it's wrestling, we will cross paths again sooner rather than later. It's weird to me to be able to say that at this point, take the oh, Pam, I know, I saw you. Sorry. At this point, it's weird for me to say that I can legitimately sit here and with a completely with all sincerity say to you, I have friends who actively are working at Impact. I have friends who are TNA. I have friends actively on the WWE roster, on the AEW roster. That's something a few years ago I never thought I'd be able to say, but it's the truth. And therefore, I enjoy watching my friends succeed no matter where they might be. Would I like them working close to home to me? Of course, because that's a good time. But if I get to watch them succeed on the highest levels and on the largest stages, I'm even happier for them.
One WWE general manager and I share Christmas cards. One WWE general manager and I, he blocked me on the internet, so take that for what it's worth.
Yep. And I was recently, until 2 weeks ago, I was texting with one of the WWE Women's World Tag Team Champions because we get our clothing made at the same place. You know what I mean? So it's like,
I think I know who it is, and I'm not going to say. Triducka says, I followed Zicky Dice to Impact when he first left the NWA. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. If you're a Zicky Dice fan, I mean, it's not hard to find that guy. I mean, he ends up everywhere. When he left the NWA, before he joined the NWA, he spent a lot of time with the United Wrestling Network. He had his stint with Impact. We saw him jump up in the NWA when they came back for after the 75th anniversary. And then I saw him 2 weekends ago at the United Wrestling Network taping. Like, that's a guy that he's always around. And
Zicky is a journeyman wrestler. There used to be a term for that, a journeyman wrestler, meaning that they would go wherever they needed to go to work.
Yeah.
And that's what we did.
Pam following suit says, hey, I started watching AEW because of Ricky Starks and Thunder Rosa. Yeah, exactly. And I love both of those two talents have been on the Alliance Guys podcast. So we're big Ricky Stark and Thunder Rosa fans here too. Let's see. We're getting towards the end here. I think we got most of the comments. Mike says, right, Jay, pro wrestling is the only entity where people act this way, tribalism or not, specifically fans on speaking of their promotions. Well, I think sports fans in general are tribalistic, but where sports where they're actively, the Ravens are trying to beat the Bills and the Niners are trying to beat the Cowboys. And wrestling, especially, what the WWE does has very to little no impact on what AEW does. I mean, in terms of the business standpoint, sure, but Samoa Joe wrestling against Hook has no bearing on, Roman Reigns wrestling against, Cody Rhodes.
I do think in the competitive sports world, there's some people do get that way where as long as you're part of my team, as long as one person's playing for my team, as long as they're playing for the 49ers, I love them. But as soon as they go, I think they're, whatever. But I look at it as am I a fan of the person or am I a fan of their contributions to a team? If I'm literally a fan of a person, it doesn't matter where they go because I will follow them to watch them there. Pro wrestling we work under the umbrella of companies, but remember, we're all independent talents, right? And so we can go and we can float places and you can still support somebody and you can follow them and their exciting journey in their career. Because I promise you, from the talent perspective, when a new opportunity presents itself, we are excited about it. And we would love for you as our supporters to come on that journey with us.
I'm still not buying a Shohei Ohtani Dodger jersey. Traducus says, oh, by the way, since you're going to be at the Collective, can you tell Brett Lauderdale to run a show in Pittsburgh or Erie? Philly is a pretty damn far away from me. Same goes with Billy Corgan for the NWA. Would love Western Pennsylvania to get some love. Just do with that what you will.
Because Lauderdale and Corgan always take my suggestions on the cities we should run.
I mean,
I could text Brett right now. Brett, dude on internet hates where we're running.
Could you imagine if you did have that kind of power, though? That'd be great.
It would be amazing. I will say this. I am sort of in charge of our scouting committee looking for cities. I have no power once I suggest them, but
Mecha Wolf will agree with me, but I think an NWA event in the auditorium in Tijuana would be amazing.
I'm sure that Mecha would. By the way, I love him. He's so amazing.
He's one of the best dudes. I've known of Mecha Wolf for quite some time. I've got to talk to him offline a few times. I hung out with him just for a few minutes in Mexico City. But that dude he gets it. He appreciates the fans. He appreciates the opportunities that Billy has presented with them. He's a good guy. And I have no bad things to say about him at all.
When I very, very first met him, somebody gave me a little gossipy, oh, be careful with him. He did it. And I was real hesitant around him. He's one of my absolute favorites. He's the chillest, the nicest. I can't yeah, exactly. Pam says a huge love for Mecca. I don't know what goes on behind anybody's, whatever, but my interactions with him have been all just solid gold.
When he came on here, much like yourself, very transparent, very down to earth, knowing full well that this guy has held championships with the World Wrestling Council, is literally working with AAA on a regular basis. Wasn't too big time to come on to my little podcast, which I was very grateful for. And again, didn't give me the he really thought about his answers and gave some very transparent and very thought out responses, which I totally appreciated. Let's see. James H. Jackson took off, so see you later, James. Sean Mega says, surprised the NWA hasn't hit Virginia yet. That's one of their old stomping grounds. I'm kind of surprised, too, that we haven't seen more NWA in the Mid-Atlantic area. But from what you were hinting at earlier, and, of course, who knows where Crockett Cup will be in 2024. I wouldn't be surprised if we get more Mid-Atlantic love in 2024.
That area is something, I'm doing a lot of our scouting. So one of the things I will tell you that factors in heavily to where we end up, we have to find a venue that is appropriately sized for us. We have to, ideally we would find a venue that wants to work with us. So these are a lot of things that come into play. Like if we were running at the level that we were, this being able to pull in 8,000 to 10,000 people like we might have NWA in the 80s, we could probably go to different places. But if we're not looking at venues that size anymore. When I'm looking at venues, max size of the venues we tend to look at is 2,000 to 5,000. So
Doty says Crockett Cup needs to stay in Crockett Country, but the bigger question is, do we get Crockett Cup in 2024?
I'm gonna guess that, I would sure as hell hope we have Crockett Cup in 2024. It's my all-time favorite event of any event in all of wrestling.
Now, here's one from me to
and
you.
It's still my goal to manage a team in the Crockett Cup.
Well, you got to get a team first.
I know.
Are you working on it? Do you have any leads?
I mean, maybe. We'll see.
Cow Palace. When are you going to bring the NWA to Cow Palace?
So the Cow Palace is literally pretty much in my backyard, Jay.
Yeah, I know.
Cow Palace is 10 minutes from my house. The Cow Palace has only run a handful of wrestling shows in the last few years. Cow Palace is always a challenge. It's very expensive. It's cold as shit. That venue is, it almost sits vacant most of the year, even though it's so legendary. I will tell you, since you mentioned it, you brought it up. When I was a child, I was growing up. This was before I'd ever even thought of living in California. Growing up, watching ESPN, AWA on ESPN, and they would always show running at the Cow Palace, whatever, Super Clash at the Cow Palace. And I was always like, my God, when I grow up, I want to go to see wrestling at the Cow Palace. So I've been to a WCW pay-per-view at the Cow Palace. I was at the WWE pay-per-view where Eddie Guerrero won the world title from Brock Lesnar at the Cow Palace. Wow. And I've been to one indie show at the Cow Palace. Those are the only 3 wrestling events I've ever been to at the Cow Palace. And most of the year, the Cow Palace sits borderline vacant. They'll do tattoo expos there. They'll do some random other crap, gun show or something. Not much runs there. And I just don't think it would be financially feasible for us.
That's a shame. Likewise, in California, Southern California, because that's Northern California, we had the Grand Olympic Auditorium, which now is a Korean Christian church, which, okay. But I would love to have seen more modern wrestling there. I was fortunate enough to see ECW when they invaded Southern California. I think that was Heat Wave. And then I did see the XPW event Free for All, where New Jack literally killed Vic Grimes. Didn't kill him, but threw him, tried to kill him. And I
quite literally,
I would have loved to see an NWA run there. Obviously, that's not going to happen, but because of the history of the building, the Sportatorium is gone. Madison Square Garden still stands, but that will never be an easy get. But a place like the Cow Palace, because of the history, and I get it. Money is everything when it comes to business. The ROI has to be there. It's a shame that the NWA couldn't get to there. But
even more than that, wrestling as somebody who lives in San Francisco, promoting wrestling in San Francisco is hard as hell.
Yeah.
It is challenging. So I just don't foresee our future, or at least in the near future, bringing us to the West Coast.
Dodie says Cow Palace too big for the NWA. Then let's go back to Kansas City Memorial Hall, and of course, please go to the Chase someday. Dodie has a lot of love for the Kansas City, Kansas, Missouri area of pro wrestling.
Dude, Dodie, the only reason I've ever been to Missouri is because of NWA, and I've been there year after year for 3 years. So I think you've gotten some love there, right?
Real quick, Jeremy says Rob Black's XPW. Yes, Rob Black's XPW.
As seen on Dark Side of the Ring.
Yes. Noob has a question for us. Jay, will Billy Corgan get another chance to turn FTW wrestling into a territory for the NWA this weekend, or it won't happen with Brian Idol as champion? And how will Natalia get involved? Noob is a resident Natalia Markova super fan.
I'm aware. Noob, have you ever? I want to give you like a news flash. Are you fully aware that you can go to the nationalwrestlingalliance.com, click on the roster, and you will discover that the National Wrestling Alliance has about 87 other people besides Natalia Markova on the roster, and you could get equally invested in all of them.
I don't know what's going to happen when the NWA returns to Florida. That's this next weekend on the 28th. I expect, there has been a rivalry brewing between Tom Latimer and Brian Idol. I don't know what the card is for the 28th, but I know that there will be some NWA influences. I haven't heard that there's going to be a special announcement from Billy Corgan, so I would pump the brakes on any kind of formal announcement that they've become a part of the territory system or anything like that until, I'm not even like Billy was there last time and it didn't happen. So I wouldn't hold my breath for it. What it feels like right now is that they're NWA adjacent. That they'll be maybe working with the NWA, but not necessarily as an official territory. But hey, that could all change. I don't know. I haven't spoken to Brian Idol directly. I haven't spoken to Billy Corgan directly. And what happens next is based on what happens next. We're all just going to wait and see. Let's see. Our pal Mike says, still have Freedom Hall in Johnson City, Tennessee. It's active and open and can hold more than Knoxville. I'd love to see the NWA here. We know that
it's been mentioned.
We know Joe Kazana Promotions is heading to Kingsport, which is was an NWA territory, NWA stronghold during the Tharp era. So who knows? Tennessee's been kind to the NWA with shows in Knoxville, Nashville, Kingsport. And with what Joe Kazana's doing, it might be Joe Kazana in those places. It might be the NWA as a whole ass show.
Freedom Hall has been mentioned. I will tell you that. I personally researched it. At the time that I researched it, it was closed for some reason. And then I do believe it has been since reopened. That is a place that's been pitched. I'll let you know. And it was pitched by Papa Joe.
Papa Joe knows what he's talking about. I like that guy too. That's a cool thing. Like I will say this, I haven't had too many guests from the NWA who I thought, wow, that guy's a real piece of work. Or, oh man, not inviting him back on the show. Everyone's been really cool and very good interviews. I always feel like they're very the talent that have come on connect with the audience, and also. We learn a lot more about them in this more intimate environment, and I feel like we get the truer versions of them, and it's always been a lot of fun.
Everybody I work with is in love with wrestling. We all love wrestling, so I think that is something that comes across when you have interactions with us, like more one-on-one, when you get to converse, and you're like, wow, this person really loves what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we all have that coworker who doesn't care, but so far it feels like nobody on the NWA is that coworker.
We don't have a coworker. They don't last long with us.
Yeah. Trideca says, too bad the Memphis Coliseum or the Louisville Gardens are in disrepair. Would be cool to run there. I think so too. Like, especially the Memphis Coliseum with all the history that had. Mm-hmm. Since everyone's thrown out the request here, Rick says he'd like to see you guys come to the Northeast. Rick, earlier in the conversation, Philly was mentioned for something. Just know that maybe your closest chance to see the NWA live would be a Philly visit. And I don't know, man. I flew
There
to
we
Philly.
go. That's the answer.
I flew to Philly last year and to see wrestling in Glassboro, New Jersey. My friends over at Dangerous Adrenaline Wrestling Gladiators, and I wouldn't mind flying to Philly to see some, wrestling. I've never been to the 2300 Arena, and
I've never been there either.
I would love to see wrestling. And let's be honest, it is a very sacred wrestling building. So much from ECW, Ring of Honor, and all the promotions that have been there since and will be there next. I wouldn't mind going to see that. And Rick says, that's a 4-hour drive for me. Rick, I know a guy who drove all the way from Ontario, Canada to be in Glassboro, New Jersey for a wrestling show. So, I know 4 hours sucks, but maybe make a weekend out of it with the missus.
Or maybe make a weekend out of it without the missus.
There you go.
Give her
Tony says AMLW in North Carolina and WLW or SICW in Missouri. I'm not expecting them to be NWA territories, but would love them to be cooperative and work more and more closer to the NWA. Again, I know the AML doesn't work directly with the NWA, but they have featured a ton of NWA talent on their events, especially during WrestleCade weekend. And we saw a lot of our champions at that particular show. And of course, they did mention earlier, Big Chris Dog mentioned WLW working with the NWA at that Harley Race event, Harley Race Memorial event. So yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, I think that the NWA is growing, and it's growing. And the fact that we get to see, we're talking about the NWA visiting these different territories. And again, Pollo, like when you first walked into the NWA doors, that's not something we had a lot of conversations about.
It is not.
It's something it's evident that the brand is growing, and I'm sure if we stay on here long enough, we'll see somebody mention, Houston, to commemorate the Paul Bosch Library, or Dallas to commemorate the Sportatorium days. And we all have a special place we'd like to go see the NWA. But the bottom line is, if you were able to, if you're in close proximity or are willing to travel, that would be great for you to go visit the NWA, because, having people at these events are really what's going to drive the business model as well as the TV. So of course, for everyone who's mentioned these cities and states, you got to also make the effort to be at these shows.
And that is so true. I do wish that we were in a position where we could be touring, 52 weeks a year and bringing the NWA right into your backyard. But the likelihood that we are going to be able to do that is very, very limited. The likelihood that a promotion in your backyard may bring a star or a talent from the National Wrestling Alliance to your home state, to your home area, and get you the opportunity to meet that person, those chances are increasing. Like that is growing hands down since where it was even when I first joined the NWA a few years ago. But one of the things I can't stress enough is if we are within a 2 to 3, maybe a little bit farther hour drive from you, and this is something that you want to experience firsthand, this is your chance. And, going out of your way to show the support in that type of environment goes a long way, because if these live events, as we're jumping around, are not doing well, they're going to become less and less again. Because, ultimately it's a business and we need to be able to support that. One of the things that I can say for sure is that the NWA and watching us live and interacting with us live is such a different experience than going to see a larger company like a WWE or even an AEW. You get workers like myself and others, my colleagues and coworkers, who are really cool with, like hanging out with you if you're not like super weird. Like, and the reason I say it that way is like, we had these great fans with us in Tampa, but they were like these obsessed autograph seekers, which was very cool because I'd never really experienced this. But they also, it becomes a little less comfortable than if you're just like, hey, like, let's have some beers. And even though I don't drink, y'all, you know this, but like, hey, let's kind of hang out and socialize. Like, the workers are so cool with that. But when you're like sort of like over in the corner, like, John Ceramic is asking that to the, I haven't gotten word from EC3 that he's that injured, but I know that I can tell you the level of injuries I saw that he had after Florida were pretty significant. And I know for a fact that he was, has canceled a few dates. So I'm going to guess that they intermesh.
Yeah. And we mentioned that he missed his date in Ontario, and then he missed
one locally and one in PA. So yeah, they were all back to back.
What's interesting about the date in California, that he would be the first world champion to defend in California since Aldous did it at Thunder Studios, a part of the Primetime Live, that short-lived partnership with the United Wrestling Network. So to me, I always kind of geek out about stuff like that because I'm a SoCal wrestling fan too, and you know, it's cool to me when the title travels to my state. When the title does travel, I like to try to get to those events. That one I wasn't going to be able to make anyways, so I'm glad I didn't miss it. But I also hope that that he does come back to California and has that title defense.
Yeah, I worked a show with Drake Frost on Friday, who he was supposed to go against on Sunday. I was like, hey, I'm really like, oh, Plunky's
the best.
He is. He's great. Yeah, so I was talking to Drake about, you know, I was like, hey, excited to read about your upcoming match. And he goes, oh, it got pushed back. It didn't get canceled. It got pushed back. That's, you know, so.
Well, and to the champ's credit, like he missed a title defense for, I think it's called Devotion Championship Wrestling in, I want to say that's in Utah. I believe it's Utah. I could be wrong. Don't hold me to that. But he came back and he was there and he defended the title against Manny Lemons at their, I think it was their 5th anniversary event. So, I mean, it's kind of cool that he was able to make that up. And I think the worst thing in the world is for a wrestler to cancel. If they have to cancel, they have to cancel. But with the idea that, oh, I'll make it up to you. EC3 so far has done that. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I think that we will be seeing that in all of these situations.
Willie Bowen would like to see Combat Zone Wrestling and Coastal Championship Wrestling affiliated with the NWA. Now, CZW's kind of been on hiatus, and I know they're trying to make a comeback, and I know that they're doing a lot of different things. I don't know that they are a good fit for the NWA. Coastal Championship Wrestling, on the other hand, has already done a couple of things with the NWA, and who knows where that relationship will go going forward. But, I mean, I would place Coastal Championship Wrestling into that conversation and that they are adjacent to the NWA. If they are bringing in our champions to defend, if they're showcasing our guys, I feel like that's almost good enough, that they don't necessarily have to be a territory if they're, you know, showcasing the NWA talents.
Can I tell you, a certain always stunning and oh so cunning manager that I know, Pollo Del Mar, made her debut in Coastal Championship Wrestling in an inter match between CCW and NWA talents. And I do believe that will be broadcasting on upcoming episodes of CCW.
Doty says, I feel bad for EC3, but I don't want to be a dick, but if a champion aren't able to defend his title, then the champion, or the champion, and us, the fans, know what he need to do. I wish he will recover soon. I don't think it's to that extent, Doty. I think, knowing what I know about EC3, obviously the man has had so many title defenses since becoming champion. This isn't like where last year we were just waiting for the champion to defend. And, you know, in an 8-month period where the champion defended 4 times, I think EC3 defended 4 times in the first 2 weeks he was champion. So I don't think we have to worry about that. And I know that the rules on mandatory title defenses have always been a little bit flexible with the modern NWA, but I don't think that's going to be an issue for EC3. He wrestled multiple matches leading up to Paranoia, and I don't think he'll be missing too many more matches before February. So
yeah, I think this is a situation where he may not be medically cleared, not necessarily medically cleared to compete, but he may not be medically cleared, particularly to travel. There are instances where people, if they've got any kind of like injury, specific kinds of injuries, that if they travel, it can lead to the possibility of blood clots, which can quite literally kill them. So as opposed to experiencing anything of that nature or risking that, I think it's better to in advance reach out, postpone the challenge to the champion, and for the champion to promise that they will come and make good on their obligation. But that we're talking about something that's fairly serious here.
Well, Pollo, we went a whole 50 minutes longer than we normally do on this live stream, and I feel like that's a good stopping place. We took every question that was in the chat, and again, I want to thank you so much for your first of all, your availability and your transparency when you come on here. You are a real dude, and you're a straight shooter. I don't feel like you bullshitted anybody tonight. I don't feel like anybody got swindled here. I feel like you were as transparent as you could be when it comes to the NWA without risking your job. So I appreciate that, and I do appreciate your time. You're definitely one of the best friends of the Alliance blog. You and Jeremiah Plunkett, who I don't know if is still in the chat. You guys are always welcome on this show. But what do you have coming up? Let's plug your things.
The only things that I really want to plug that are upcoming for me, obviously, continue to check out nationalwrestlingalliance.com. Download your copies of the NWA magazine. A new issue should be dropping in about 2 weeks to 3 weeks there. I can't give you an exact date. I don't know when that is, but it should be dropping between the end. I guess since next week is technically the end of January, it's going to be dropping in the first weeks of February. My birthday is coming up on the 31st, so that's what reminded me. I'm like, oh, we're already at the end of the month. I'm also going to be down in Tampa with the collective this weekend. The 27th, Effie's Big A Brunch down there. It's going to be my 7th brunch, and it's we're returning to Tampa, which is where I actually did my very first gay brunch. So Tampa's like a second home to me now. I will be back and forth between California and Florida rather, because I'm going to be down at CCW on February 9th in Kissimmee, Florida, I believe, and the 10th in Fort Lauderdale. So I'm bi-coastal. I'm bi-coastal, baby.
You're a world-renowned traveler now. Do you have your never mind. The preferred traveler number? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I definitely have my frequent flyer number. And I need to get my Clear back. I was on Clear. Clear, if you're a traveling wrestler or somebody who travels often for anything, Clear is life-changing. So where you can just sort of like skip the line and they just like scan your eyes and they're like, you're not a terrorist, go. So that's pretty amazing. But I'm traveling this week down to Florida, and then I'm back home. And then I'm back in Florida in 2 weeks. So pretty, oh my God. Yeah. Bisexual, bi-coastal. Whoop, whoop. Yeah. The bisexual, you can have that one. I don't want anything to do with the Southern Six.
Ooh,
what a bunch of jerks.
Subject. Pollo's over with me, says John, and Jeremy says thank you for talking to us again, Paul. Again, much appreciated. And of course, you'll be on later tonight with some NWA content.
Yep, I'm gonna be on Twitch. I go on Twitch at 6:05 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and oddly enough, I go on Twitch. We watch wrestling, and I put on makeup so I can go onto TikTok live almost immediately after. So
it's amazing. Perfectly good use of time.
Yeah, I'm streaming with y'all, doing my makeup. Then as soon as we're done, I'm like, okay, that's it. I'm going to TikTok. So Tuesdays are my day. NWA and social media days.
There it is. Thanks again, Paul, so much for being on. And we're going to wrap it up here. Of course, check out the other guys tomorrow night, the other Alliance guys. I don't know what they're going to be talking about, but I'm sure it'll be fun and informative and cool. And then, of course, on Thursday, Grumpy DKM, Grumpy Jaden, and myself will be talking probably about wrestling, I guess. Maybe food. We like food. We all like food. All right, until next time, we'll see you at the matches. Thanks for joining the stream. This has been a presentation of Alliance-Wrestling.com. We genuinely appreciate your support. Would you consider subscribing so you'll never miss a future episode? I'd also like to remind you we do a live stream every Tuesday at 5 p.m. before NWA Power. You can find us on social media at the Alliance blog. And until next time, we are